Mark is a Senior Foresight Manager at the Future Today Institute and led the built environment hospitality, retail, restaurants, and CPG practice. Prior to FTI, Mark worked as a workplace strategist, designer, design researcher, and futurist for clients across the country, most recently through his role as Director of Innovation and Research and Senior Designer at an Ohio-based design and architectural firm. In his work at FTI, Mark has explored the future of communities, digital interactions, supply chain, and logistics, geographic cities, and artificial intelligence's impact on consumer goods and design. Cogence community, please help me in welcoming Bryan to talk about embracing the future, leveraging technologies, and to thrive in 2024 and beyond. Mark?
All right, can you hear me? Yes. All right, well, I am so honored to be here, excited to be here. I've been a part of this industry for over 20 years. I was actually at MA Design before I went to, some people call it the dark side when you leave the industry, right? You're like, no matter where you're going, it's the dark side. So I'm now on the dark side. But I'm here to help you because I want to cover today ways that you can redefine the ways that you are thinking about how you see technology impacting your work, your clients, and your industries. And I want to do that because of the internet. Who here remembers when the internet first really started to come about? When it happened, we were all young. We were very, very young when it happened. Who here remembers thinking, well, why would I ever use that in my house? Why would I ever use that in my work? We don't need that. That's just for all of those scientist people over there, right? Because it was DARPA. And now we use it thousands of times a day. This is a pattern for us, specifically in our industry. What happens is we see new technology and we fear it. And then what happens is there's a little bit of ambiguity and then there's mass adoption. And we figure out what we want to happen with it. And this is a pattern because it's happened over and over again in our industry, specifically with things like this. Who remembers when CAD first came out? Do you all remember what CAD actually stands for? Computer-aided design, right? Or drafting. It depends on who, like all of the terminology falls into one. So the thing about CAD at the time, when it first came out, people were like, well, why would I ever use this? And then it was like, oh my gosh, it's going to replace my job. It's going to be something that changes our industry holistically. And now, it simply enables us to do what we already did, but just with more improved ways, more augmented ways. And now it seems very familiar to us. We need to make the future feel more familiar right now, especially when it comes to technology, which is what I'm going to be talking a lot about, the emerging technologies that are going to be impacting our industry. And I'm so thankful for Cogence to be here because I think we in Ohio can set the tone. Because right now, when I'm talking to leaders around the world, what's happening is I'm hearing this. See if it happens. Maybe. Oh, I need to point this way. Yeah, I'm not going to put a bad word up there right now, but really, what I'm hearing is more fear, uncertainty, and doubt. There's fear about technology because it's too abstract right now. I don't really understand what it can do for me. There's doubt about will I hit my revenue targets. There's uncertainty about will I still have a job. As well as then we've got other things, other forces that are causing us disruption like supply chain issues. We've got elections that are happening. We've got inflation, politics. It's a very, very awkward and scary times to be a leader in this industry. Fear is a normal reaction. However, we cannot let fear keep us in a state of indecision because right now where we are with technology, as I saw from the survey, we're all kind of like, we're not quite sure, right? We're just waiting for somebody else to dip their toe in and figure it out for us. Well, that's problematic because of something that's about to happen. So every year, we publish an annual trend report. And it's a tech trend report, and it covers 16 different practice areas. I'll talk a little bit more about it here in a minute. But we do tons and tons of research around it. We spend months looking into all of the different areas. And around Q3 of last year, we started to notice a pattern occurring. And it was because we're starting to see a technology super cycle. Now, in economic terms, a super cycle is a time when there's booming demand and it elevates the prices of goods and commodities and assets to unprecedented heights. These super cycles can last for years or decades, and it creates substantial and sustained economic growth. An example of this would be the Industrial Revolution, where we had the steam engine, and we had one general purpose technology that created a lot of economic growth. Another one was the era of the internet, which again, one general purpose technology that came about to lead to a super cycle. So what we discovered is that this time, the super cycle, it's not one general purpose technology that's causing this super cycle, it's three. What this technology super cycle promises to bring is, because of biotechnology, artificial intelligence, and the connected ecosystems of things like wearables or IoT sensors, these all touch other technologies right now. And they're all impacting the way that we work, and they're all impacting those forces that I described earlier. And it promises to bring a very potent wave of innovation throughout all the ways that we live, not just our industry specifically. And so we really need to start thinking about the ways that we can get beyond our fear and uncertainty and doubt. We need to get more focused. I want to inspire you today to think about how technology can become a force multiplier versus a barrier. I want you to rethink the way that you could use some of the technologies that you're going to see today, because I do think that if we do some of the things that I'm going to cover here in the next few minutes, we'll be doing more than most other people in the entire world are already doing. We can set the tone. So with that, maybe. Hello again. I know, technology, right? It's the best. My name is Bryan. I'm a Senior Foresight Manager with the Future Today Institute, and I am really excited to talk to you about the emerging technologies, the ways that they are going to be impacting our industry. What I would encourage you to do is, you find yourself in a moment of uncertainty, lean into it. Because what I often find is that those are the futures that we really need to explore versus trying to rehash all the information that we already know. So our roadmap over the next day or tomorrow is, I'm going to start by giving you data. We're going to talk about what I'm seeing happening in our industry, specifically with all the technologies, as well as then what that means for where I think we could go. I want to do that because I want to help make sure that the future feels familiar, so that way when I present scenarios at the very end of the session, you can understand how I got there. And then we're going to have a brief time for Q&A. And then tomorrow, we're going to take some insights that you're going to hopefully generate today, and we're going to talk a little bit about it together. And then as a community, which is what Cogence is for, right? Come together to understand what those insights and implications could be. Now, some of you may not be familiar with FTI, so we are a global strategic foresight consultancy. We're a small but mighty firm where we work around the world to really help our clients understand what's happening in the future, all with the purpose of driving better corporate strategy. Now, when I say I'm a futurist or a strategic foresight professional, many of you probably think that I actually do something like this. I've got a crystal ball and I'm just humming and guessing around. I wish it were that simple. It's really not, because it really looks more like this, quite frankly. We spend weeks and often months doing research to go through our frameworks to understand what's happening. And then we do a lot of writing about it. All with the practice, through our practice of our strategic foresight methodology. So strategic foresight is actually a very rigorous, disciplined approach. It's a data-driven, evidence-based methodology where we use both quantitative and qualitative frameworks to help our clients understand where to play, how to win in the future, and how to ensure organizational resiliency. And it's because of all of the volatility that we're all seeing in the market right now. And we do this through scenarios, we do this through workshops, trend reports, again, all to really help leaders break free from the hype cycle of what they're seeing in the news and to develop strategic action. Because it's one thing to posit what the future actually could be, it's another to make sure that we are then creating action behind it. Now, I did work in the built environment industry for about 20 years, and I did everything from healthcare to workplace to multifamily to retail, everything in between. Since moving to FTI for the past 2 years, I've been doing more things like this, looking at the future of communities. How and when and where are they going to form? Where are they going to interact with each other? Looking at the future of our urban cities. What does it mean as we're starting to see things like urban decay? What will bring people back to our downtowns? As well as the future of supply chain, how to make them more resilient. I've also been working on this. So last year, I'm proud to say at FTI, we launched our very first built environment tech trend report. And in it, we covered 25 different trends that cover everything from urban planning to engineering to architecture, design, and beyond. And we also had 6 scenarios in it. Now, the trend report is what I'm going to use as a lot of the data that we're going to talk about today. And it's important because we all use our trend reports at FTI to build off of each other's work. So along with what you're going to hear, what I research, you're going to get some of the other insights. And those insights are based off of, we had over almost 700 trends. We have 16 sections that cover everything from AI to Web3 to the built environment, supply chain, hospitality, and so on. As well as then it's about 1,000 pages. So if you want to download it, it's all free. I'll have a QR code at the end that you can download. Just need to provide your email address. But it is the data of what we're going to be looking at, of what's explaining what's happening today and where we can go tomorrow. So with that, we're going to start with today's data. And along with that, I'm also going to highlight what are some of the uncertainties because of what we're seeing within technology, because that's part of our methodology. Because what we do is we take both the trends and then the uncertainties and we put them together to say, if these things are happening, what does that mean for us in the future? So it's important to know that trends, when we define trends, are what we can know about the future today. And as we move forward, I want you to keep Adam in mind. And no, not this Adam, this Adam. So this is a framework that we use with all of our clients where we're trying to prioritize decisions. What is something that you hear that you need to act on? Meaning like right now. If you don't go do it, you're going to be completely disrupted. What's something that you need to make decisions about? Meaning that you don't really have enough information, but you know you need to act on it quickly, but maybe it's for next year. So what are the decisions that you need to make? Or what's something that you hear that you need to monitor? It's more far off, it has more long-term impact to us, we just want to keep it on our radar. As I go through both of the trends and the uncertainties, I would encourage you to write down these act, decide, and monitor insights that you have because they're going to be the genesis for our discussions tomorrow, and they're also the things that you might be able to use going back with your companies as a takeaway. So let's start with our first trend, which is AI. It wouldn't be a conference in 2024 if we didn't talk about AI, and clearly you all have AI on the mind because it was one of the top things that you said is going to impact our industries. And so our first trend with AI, of course, it is helping to automate a lot of our practices. Right now, we've got many, many platforms that are coming to market that are able to take different parameters and different settings. This is but one of them, where you can actually plug in that information and generate floor plans instantaneously. And it can generate hundreds of them, which means that the skills that we are starting to need to develop is acting more like an editor versus acting generally as just a creator specifically. Now, this could be great because what AI could also let us do is help the workplace sector, which we all know is a very challenging sector right now because people are not wanting to come back to the office. But through AI, we are able to input the parameters of individual users, which will allow us to then say, hey, what are the ways that we could create place and space that will attract the talent and keep them engaged in the office? We're also seeing it be used in retail to help meet customers in new ways. So Jack in the Box is actually using AI. Does everybody know Jack in the Box? They're a restaurant. It's kind of like a chicken place. I'm a vegan vegetarian, so I don't really eat there, but they're doing cool things with AI because what they're doing is they are actually using AI to figure out site selection. So they're using AI to say, okay, based off of our customers, where's the best place for us to put a profitable store? Which, for anybody who's a developer out there, could mean that that could help with your performa process, your site selection process, and for things like multifamily housing when we're trying to make sure that we're hitting the needs for the community that we're trying to develop. For our engineers in the audience, AI is starting to automate things like energy planning and planning for energy demand, not just for today, but in the future. So this is a recent patent that I was looking at, actually it's a white paper I should say, where what they were looking at doing was using AI to say, okay, let's figure out how much energy we're going to need within this neighborhood, and then figure out what happens as that neighborhood starts to scale, how much energy we might need to increase going to that area. Which means that they were then able to plan for the future sustainable energy processes and generation that they could incorporate into that neighborhood development plan as well. For our structural engineers, AI is being used along with sensors to be able to monitor infrastructure failures. So think about the Baltimore Bridge. While that was a complete accident, it's one that could have been prepared for. Meaning what we could have looked at is to say, AI, where are our problem areas with our bridges and roads right now that we should be planning to repair? Now, along with this, what this actually highlighted was that 1 out of 10 bridges in the United States right now are in need of dire repair. And I looked up the statistics, and so in Franklin County, 8% of bridges need dire repair. In Hamilton County, 20% of bridges need dire repair. And cities are starting to take note of this because what they're doing is they're looking at AI to automate the planning process of what infrastructure needs to be repaired and developed within their walls or their area, because what that means is that that automates what processes they can then put in place. We're also, for our contractors out there, we're seeing AI being able to use to automate our contracts. Meaning that what's happening is that we are using AI to verify purchasing by saying if the spec meets the PO, we can automatically make that purchase, which could change our RFI, which could change our submittal processes, which means that it could accelerate our projects. We know that time and acceleration is very important to us, which means that the specifications that we create are going to be even much more important. We are also seeing AI being used from a material standpoint. So materially, this is an AI that can help with concrete mixes, meaning it can tell us what is the right mixture of concrete to be able to meet our carbon emissions requirements. It's also being used to generate more materials. So this is with a collaboration of Google DeepMind and the University of California at Berkeley. And what they are doing is using AI to create new materials that have never been created before. And what they found was over 380,000 new materials that are stable, which a lot of it is meant for things like new electric batteries or new materials that are much more sustainable for the built environment. And then my favorite use of AI is actually being used to automate code compliance checks within BIM models. Now, I don't know about you, but I got very frustrated when I had to submit a project to the city, wait 30 days or more or so, get comments back, maybe have a persnickety code official. Is anybody a code official in the audience here? No? Good. Okay, we can talk about them then. So you all know what I'm talking about, right? Like, who wouldn't want this process to be automated? This makes 100% sense, especially when our models are starting to get smarter. So with AI, where we're really at right now is that we're in this era of concept to actualization, where AI is being able to help us to expedite the process. It's helping to change our processes to, again, go faster, but it's also changing the skills that we're going to need to have in the future. To me, AI is our next CAD right now. We need to start getting past the ambiguity and start utilizing it in a way. We need to get past where we are figuring out what everybody else is doing and just start down the process. But that brings some uncertainties, such as what does the iteration process look like for our projects? That's something that you might need to act, decide, or monitor around. You need to figure out what is the optimal project and development parameters you want to put into AI in order to make sure that the output that you get is what you are wanting, what your clients are wanting. And then how fast project work can be completed in the future. Where do we want to use AI to expedite our processes? So again, maybe write those down as something as an act, decide, and monitor on your end. Up next is our next technology is digital twins, where everything is really becoming a digital twin. Now, to talk about digital twins, it's to make sure that we're level set. So digital twins are really living BIM models. They are models that are connected to sensors and other data collection points to collect live input information and then put out predictive reports. They can be used for things like monitoring infrastructure, like this. This is a digital twin of a roadway and a bridge that can monitor, because of the sensors there, when it needs repairs, when there are cracks, and maybe when it's going to fail. Now, digital twins are becoming more and more common, and we're starting to see them happen in our cities, where we have New York that is actually creating a digital twin of the city and then creating digital mesh networks where the digital twins are starting to talk to each other. So buildings are now able to share information where they can say, hey, I need more power, or I've got a sewage issue. The fire alarms are going off. There's poor air quality. So cities are starting to use this to figure out, again, when new infrastructure needs to be built, as well as residents are starting to use the digital twin of the city. So in Miami, there's a digital twin of Miami, and residents are using it to see, based off of the amenities that are located on the digital twin, where they want to move. What do the school systems look like? What do the reports look like? So this changes, again, our development cycles. We're also starting to see AI, again, we have our super cycle technology starting to converge together, that we have AI that's being used to convert old CAD files into intelligent BIM models. And there are also new systems in place to automate the conversion of BIM models into digital twins, especially for sustainability purposes too. Now, in the industrial sector, this has been happening for a while. The industrial sector, in my opinion, is actually at the forefront when it comes to utilizing digital twins, because they're using it to create a mock-up of the process line, the manufacturing line, so that they can use the digital twin to see when there's going to be a failure or breakdown or a part needs to be replaced. What's interesting is now we have scanners that employees in those warehouses are now walking through and scanning the environment to update the digital twin in a live effort, which is going to impact how we manage spaces, which is going to impact the services that we offer. There are new services that we are leaving on the table. There's money on the table to be had with this. Because what we're also seeing is that we are using digital twins for things like pre-experiencing. So this was a senior living environment where they were using a digital twin for people who were not in the area of the development to pre-experience what it would look like for them to live there. And what they found is that there was the same emotional response that people were having of visiting it in person as visiting it on the digital twin, which means that we can start using digital twins to create trust in our places, in our spaces, which again, going back to the workplace, could be a boon for us when we think about how our workplaces might need to be reconfigured in the future. Digital twins can tell us when to reconfigure an office if it's underutilized. In a hospital sector where you might say we might need to reconfigure the digital twin or the area, we might be able to use the predictive report from the digital twin to do so. So what are the uncertainties because of digital twins? Well, first and foremost, we have how will your projects communicate with the city's digital twin in the future? If the city has a digital twin and they start to require you putting your models becoming a digital twin to communicate, are you prepared for that? What if a digital twin could tell you if your company was out of compliance? There are digital twins of entire companies and supply chains to see if you are going about and acquiring materials the right way. And then what will construction documents need to look like in the future because of digital twins, of integrating more sensors and collecting more data? So our next trend is additive manufacturing, which is one of my favorite trends. So additive manufacturing is really 3D printing and 4D printing put together. So there's 4D printing, which is really where you're printing reactive materials that can change their state based off of external stimuli. So many of you are probably thinking 3D printing, it's not that, it's not really here yet. Well, we have the largest 3D printed neighborhood that's ready to be completed outside of Austin. They're on time, they're under budget, and they are under, the resources that they're using are much more sustainable. And not only that, but they did it a lot faster. So if we go back to acceleration, right, this is a tool that is a trend in a technology that's starting to scale. Now, many are skeptical because of the materials that come out of 3D printing right now. Well, I'm here to tell you that they're 3D printing food, they're 3D printing shoes, and you tell me, does this look like something that you would want to live in or something that the developers are trying to put out there right now? It does to me. This is the inside of one of those 3D printed homes. So the materiality is becoming less and less of a barrier for people to adopt this technology. Along with that, when we have 3D printing, again, we go back to 4D printing where we're printing reactive materials. So this is a study that was done to print reactive wood that could become self-assembling furniture. So for any manufacturers out there, imagine what you do is you 3D print something flat, you'd ship it to site, and then through, again, external stimuli, whether that's electricity, pressure, water, whatever, it can actually assemble itself, which changes our construction practices. It changes our documentation processes. We also are starting to use 3D printing for locally sourcing materials. So this was a project done in Italy that what they used was locally sourced clay to 3D print their structures. And these structures were for people who didn't have a home. So that means that we could start thinking about how this could tackle our unhomed crisis. We're also 3D printing new materials, so there are studies that are being used, that are using AI to print materials that have never been made before from one printer. This is actually 3D printed concrete that is being used as a way to capture carbon. And we also have drone swarm 3D printing, where we're having our first buildings printed using this technology to accelerate and to be able to bring everything to the site. It also changes things like prototyping. So they're using immersive technologies in order to create an object, and then it ends up basically being 3D printed to test it as the prototype. This changes what happens in our design process. What does this mean? What does this look like when we're interacting with clients and they want to see a replica of our potential spaces, of our potential buildings? So again, some uncertainties with this. I've named it before, but I think it's important to come back to it. Does this help our unhoused or unhomed crisis? If we start thinking about how we could rapidly create new buildings and structures on site? Could we see a remote construction workforce that prints and constructs from home? Because if what we're doing is we're remote controlling more technology on the site, does that give us the opportunity to increase our labor pool from beyond just our geographic region? Next up is connectables. And so this is part of our technology supercycle where we're talking about the connected Internet of Things, right? So we've got our wearables, our devices that are being embedded with AI. And so most people, when we think about connectables and wearables, we're all thinking about things like this, where we've got our watches, our glasses, and everything. Well, we now have connectables that are shoes, that are clothes, they're putting sensors into the wall to become connectables to be responsive. And we also have new devices like this. This is Humane's pin. So this pin has an AI on it that actually you can take a phone call, it can summarize your schedule, it can translate what you're saying into French, it can tell you if what you're about to eat is going to have an allergic reaction with your medical history and conditions. Which means that talking to this pin, which is what you do, becomes much more important. Speech to design and speech to project implementation is happening right now. Which means that the words that we use in our industry are going to become much more important. It's going to change our documentation process. And remember those digital twins that I was talking about earlier? We're now able to talk to those digital twins to ask it questions, to have it act as an advisor to us based off of the parameters that we put in play. And when I say sensors and these kind of connectables are going everywhere, I do mean literally everywhere. So this is a patent that I was looking at for a connectable chair, where based off of the sensors and the integration of your wearable technology, it can tell you if you're stressed, if you need to take a break, if you haven't been standing long enough, or if you might need to change your routine. And so these kind of devices really start to change how we're interacting with our current interfaces. So again, I talked about talking to text or talking to design is happening. One uncertainty that we need to think about is something like, what if talking is the new way of designing going forward? What happens when we're in meetings and we're taking notes with our clients? What happens when our clients are able to come with their AI that they've talked to and give us the parameters that we then can put into our AI models? As well as this, what happens if computer screens go away? Because I'm telling you, with these new projection and these connectables, this is going to become a reality. So I'm sorry for anybody who just bought the new iPhone 16 that just came out, but in a few short years, it might look very differently, which means that how we work, those desks that we all have right now, we may not need them. Blockchain. So blockchain technology, very simply, is a ledger that creates data blocks that once they are created, they cannot be changed. So it's meant to be able to store data for us in a secure fashion. And we're starting to see it enter our industry through things like this. So the EU just passed the Digital Product Passport Act. And what it says is that any product that is sold within the EU must have a digital product passport. And those digital product passports are tracking our goods from start to finish, which means that from the materials that go into it, to the way that it's produced, to the materials that are wrapping around it as it's getting shipped, to its end of life cycle. And it's being tracked and stored on blockchain. So that means that our data collection practices are going to need to get more robust, especially, unfortunately, for our construction industry as we think about how they are using those materials and implementing that data. Maybe a more project example of this So this is from Gardner Builders, a Minneapolis-based contractor who on July 23rd turned over the first two for our industry. They turned over a digital twin, and then they had blockchain technology that captured all of the RFIs, all of the communication and correspondence, as well as the changes to the documents as part of a blockchain platform that they turned over to the client. So the handover process is starting to change. Who here has been part of a handover process where you've turned over something to a client or an owner or developer? I mean, kind of, yeah, right? We might need to store that data differently because the handover process is where a lot of the information is lost, especially on the owner and developer side. This could help us. We're also seeing it from an energy standpoint. So this is in India, and what they're doing is they're using blockchain as a way to track trading energy. So energy that's generated on virtual power plants is being tracked on blockchain to be able to understand what energy is being used and where and by how much. And it's also being used for things like building maintenance, where AI and smart contracts are automating the inspection of HVAC systems, and then storing that information, the results of that, on blockchain. So again, so that it can be handed over to the owner, it can be part of the diagnostics understanding going forward. So the uncertainties that this create really starts with data. What data do we want to verify and should we verify? What data is our clients going to ask us to verify going forward? And then how are we going to provide access to that data? A couple more technologies and then we'll move on to the end here. So immersive layers. So we are now having XR technologies, which is really the umbrella for AR, VR, mixed reality coming together under one umbrella. And so we have more immersive layers to our projects than ever. The first big implication is that we are now creating new senses because of those immersive technologies. We're creating digital senses. So we're now able to touch things within the metaverse. And I want to be very clear, I don't think we're going to be living in the metaverse. I think that was a ploy by a technology company to gain market share. But what I do think is that we are going to have new experiences that are more immersive in a digital world. And so if we're thinking about we can now touch things in the metaverse, that means that we need to think about how we're designing those spaces, those sensorial moments and experiences. And actually, there are studies that I'm looking at for this year's Tech Trend Report that are talking about using XR and more technologies like these to be able to control things like what's happening in the warehouse, what's happening at smart ports, what's happening on the construction site too. Those immersive technologies are also coming to our retail centers, where this was demoed at NRF. And what they were looking at was doing, Samsung created a display where you could actually smell coffee at the display and, you could hear coffee being poured and smell donuts. Which I'm like, it's just 2 seconds from the counter, but fine, if that's what you're going to go with, have at it. But we're also able to share those senses too. So there are new technologies that are going to impact our entertainment industry. So our movie theaters, where we're now able to capture a taste or a sense and transmit it digitally to somebody else so that they can have the exact same sense that we just had. This one was talking about sharing the wine that you just tasted with somebody, a family or a friend. And yes, we have many more immersive environments like the Sphere in Las Vegas, which is great and is implementing some of those more physical technologies to interact with the digital experience. This is also impacting our learning, where we have training that's being done immersively. And what the studies are showing is that a person who trains virtually retains the information 70% more than if they take a class, if they just watch a video. And this is being done in typically high stakes area, because think about what's happening on job site or at a live airport where you've got taxiing and taking off of airplanes. They're training their technicians to be able to understand field conditions before they even step foot on the field. It's also changing how we're teaching, because we now have things like this, where this is a way to teach how to put an engine together without the need of an actual engine part or the tools or other pieces, which could change, again, our drawing and our submittal process, which could change our documentation process as well. And yes, we are having immersive technologies where we can actually step into spaces where we can use holographic displays to experience them in scale, as well as experience them in 3 dimensions, where we've got 3-dimensional signage that is able to almost come out and feel like we are leaping into those immersive worlds. Some uncertainties Do we need to travel anywhere to truly experience anything then? Do we need to travel to the site anymore? What does it actually mean for our site visits? Will we collaborate differently? And then what are the new immersive design parameters that we want to incorporate into our projects? Materiality, as I talked about, is also beginning to change. We have metamaterials, which are smart materials. Does anybody know what this is? This is self-healing concrete. So our metamaterials are able to exhibit properties that don't really exist in nature. Self-healing, kind of, but not to this extent in the way that it's actually happening. And actually, researchers at Boston University have created new materials that block sound, but not airflow. Does anybody work on workplace projects here? What's the top 3 complaints of a workplace project? Anybody know? It's usually temperature, lighting, and noise. And so if we can block noise but not airflow, that changes how we might make people feel more secure within the workplace. We're also seeing metamaterials that can absorb seismic activity. So if anybody does any work where there are earthquakes or instability, we're now able to use materials that can go back to their original state, but as well as turn that into energy for the building itself. And these materials are also able to help us be more sustainable too, because this is pigmentless paint, that the paint can actually change color and display whatever color you want. It's the lightest paint in the world. It actually helps keep our buildings cooler. It does not fade, which is great, but if you work in branding and retail, make sure you get the color right the first time. Otherwise, you're going to be really sorry because it's meant to last for a very long, long time. And this is also similarly where we are engineering new types of paint.
Researchers have developed a new type of paint structurally designed to repel heat, comes in a range of colors, and is expected to last centuries. Known as plasmonic paint, it uses the arrangement of nanoparticles to create color instead of traditional pigments. The paint is so lightweight that it would only take 1.4 kilograms to cover a Boeing 747 compared to the 454 kilograms needed for traditional commercial paint.
So these are all part of those engineered materials, that synthetic biology, that bioengineering technology that I was talking about, as well as this, where we're now able to engineer bacteria that can go on things like your flooring or rugs that will actually eat dirt, which changes our maintenance processes. As well as then this is a new tile that was built using algae that can clean water, which could change our wet walls, which could change our water resources, which could change our swimming pools. So uncertainties because of this, I'll just give one. What does the longevity of space and site or development look like as our materials are able to self-heal and then be able to sustain longer? And then our very last tech trend, and I'll wrap this all together, are robots. So our robots are becoming cobots, which are really more coworkers. And many of you have probably seen this already on the site. There are many, many, many new types of cobots that are coming. These robotic workers are geared to do very specific tasks like this one. So this was a startup in San Francisco called Canvas that leverages robotics, AI, and machine learning to enhance drywall finishing and painting. It's about the size of a kitchen stove and is made to be able to navigate uneven terrain. And what's important about these cobots is that they're starting to learn from us, meaning that they're watching what we do, the activities, and then they're performing those same activities, which is going to be important when we think about how we want to ask the question of what data was the cobot that I'm going to bring to my job site trained on? Who did it watch to make sure that it's going to perform well? And many of you have probably also seen, who's here seen Spot? Yeah, right? So Spot is the robotic dog that many job sites are looking at to go and do inspections, take film, monitor for defects in the drawings, and then automatically report it back. What's important about these cobots is that they represent the next evolution of AI. So what's happening with AI is trained on something called large language models, which is just text. And it's usually text that's on the internet. So what's happening is AI is running out of data and text to be trained on. So we're moving from large language models to large action models, where what's happening is not only will AI be trained on what to say or tell us to do next, it's actually going to do it for us, or could tell something else to do it, which is how Spot is trained. If it sees something, it knows that it needs to take a different action based off of what it was trained on. So one big uncertainty for this one, we talked about costs earlier and compensation. Who gets paid to do the work in this type of an instance? That's something that we'll need to figure out. So let's pull this all together. So what do we do? Well, the point of showing you all this information is so that you can see where we are today. And now I want to talk about where we could go tomorrow based off of what I'm seeing. And because of the trends and the data and uncertainties, we put them together into scenarios. And those scenarios are data-driven, they're narratives about the future. And what I've pulled together for you today are a couple different scenarios. One is about where I think cities are going, which I think impacts all of us, as well as then where I think that I see architects and engineers, as well as then owners and developers, and then contractors going in the next 10 years. These are very high level, but just know that as I go through these, I want you to make sure that you're keeping, again, Adam in mind. I want you to think about what do you need to act on because of this, decide, and then monitor. So let's examine cities in the next 10 years. In cities, what we could possibly see is that cities have moved into self-organized processes. Digital twin reports guide what infrastructure cities want to implement that are open to the public, so the public knows what's coming. Utility companies are now billing based off of blockchain verified utility usage. And then manufacturing can now happen on every corner because we've got additively manufactured kiosks all around the city. For designers and engineers, this is still cities, wearables direct residents where to walk to optimize their carbon footprint and energy harvesting. Siloed living buildings, meaning everything in one building, are managed by AI to optimize renovations for new mixed-use amenities. And then cities prioritize additively made resilience and affordable housing projects. For architects and engineers, firms are starting to use XR and AI for new iterative services with designs for future site assessments and then longevity monitoring. Potential clients use their AI to evaluate the financial ramifications of your designs and processes as part of the RFP process. And then spoken specifications and drafting have to be recorded and submitted during the permit process. But thankfully, automated permitting keeps the process quick. For owners and developers, what I see is that potential tenants and customers are asking to pre-experience the space before leasing or even shopping in the store. Owners have begun to require all projects have a digital twin for feedback reports and maintenance of their properties. And developers or owners are selling XR ad space on their facades. And then for the construction side of things, construction teams are outfitted with wearables that track safety and direct tasks to be completed that are verified on blockchain. On-site fabrication drone installation have helped meet sustainability goals and expedited project timelines. And GCs can submit RFIs and submittals through digital twins first to verify if they meet the specifications. So that's what I think could happen the next 10 years if we take action. The good news is that you probably heard a lot of good things and a lot of bad things, but we're still 2024, which means that we still have the opportunity to act. So my question to you all is, what do you want to be prepared for? Well, let me give you my thoughts. Let's talk some strategy. Here are my ADMs, my atoms, my act-decide monitors for you. For owners, I think we need to start thinking about how we act and require digital twins for future projects, deciding on how to integrate maintenance and monitoring for the future, and then monitoring data collection regulations so that way as we're implementing those technologies, we don't get caught unaware. For architects and designers, I think we need to convert old files into BIM and digital twins for data. We need to decide on how to leverage AI for design optimization and material generation. And we need to monitor which automated compliance technologies and additive manufacturing skills to invest in. For engineers, I think we need to act by determining what data needs to be verified on blockchain. We need to decide on what new maintenance and monitoring services could be offered, and then monitoring new practices for infrastructure development. And then for developers, we need to act by deploying XR technology for advertising and leasing. We need to decide on how to implement multi-crowd feedback loops. and then monitoring smart city and city digital twin meshes for future compliance. And then, of course, for our construction people, we need to act by identifying additive manufacturing and robotics partners. We need to decide what products you want to be manufactured on site, and then monitoring the use of digital twins for handover and record keeping. My encouragement for all of you is that you need to go further than 3-year planning. Most companies feel like if you go 3 years or 5 years, you're way ahead. And I'm here to tell you that most companies, that's not the case, because what that means is you're going to be disrupted by somebody else coming to the market. I think everybody needs to start creating more stringent and more understandable tech governance policies. Right now, we're working with some companies on their AI governance policies about what they're allowing certain levels of individuals to use AI for. Because I'm guaranteeing you, whether you know it or not, your employees are using AI, which means that you have IP leakage all over the place right now. And then look for partners to begin to experiment with, because I don't imagine that everybody has the capital or the infrastructure to be able to do all of these things together. But this is where we can leverage the people in this room to say, how can we work together? And most importantly, I want you to ask what if now, so that way in the future you're not asking now what. So as I promised, this is the QR code for our trend report. You can download all 16 of them for free. You just have to provide your email address. We launch our trend report in March of every year at South by Southwest. It's a great place to be. Icon, which is one of the leading 3D printing manufacturers in the country, just debuted their new 3D printer that can 3D print multiple stories. So I highly recommend, if you've never been, come check it out. If you go, let me know. Find me on LinkedIn. I'll happily give you a little bit of a guided tour because it's a little daunting at first. But with that, I know we're very close to time, but hopefully since we started a few minutes late, we can allow for some more times for Q&A. Also, if you do want to connect with me, that's the QR code that you can do so. So with that, I will pause and just see what questions that you may have.
I asked ChatGPT this question.
Oh, great.
And I asked it this question. I said, we're going to be at a seminar today. And I said, I'm going to ask this group a question. I want to ask you the question, which is, 20 years from now, how many of the jobs of people in this room will be substantially or totally replaced by AI? And I asked, before you answer.
Go ahead. Okay, sorry.
I asked ChatGPT to predict what the answer would be.
Okay.
And
what my answer would be?
Oh, one more.
Okay.
I said, on a 1 to 10 scale, I said 1 would be minimal replacement, 10 would be total replacement, and I said predict the number. So it did.
Okay.
That's my question. Then I'm going to tell you what it said.
Well, I want to hear the answer afterwards, too.
You don't get to hear the answer first.
Well, not first, no, I imagine not. So you said replace, which is a very key word that I want to pick up. I think that 90 to 100% of the industry is going to be substantially transformed because of AI. Replaced, however, I think we're probably closer to that, let's be conservative here, more to 30 to 40%. And what I mean by replace, though, is not that they're going to lose their job. They're going to need to have new skills that are trained in order how to interact with AI. Because the thing about AI is everybody's always waiting for it to make the obvious error, right? The thing about it is that we are intelligent people. If it gives us some information that doesn't make sense, we're not going to use it. The threat here is for AI to be used by somebody who doesn't know what they're doing. And I don't mean that in a derogatory fashion, but what I mean is somebody who's just come out of school, or maybe who's just taken a new certification, who is doing a documentation process for the first time or design process for the first time, and asks AI, where do I need firewalls? Or asks AI, can you give me the leveling heights that I need to use as part of this structural computation? And what AI will put out generally looks right, and so that means that that person is probably going to trust it, when it's probably giving them maybe some false information and they just don't know it. So the skills that we need to change are how we leverage AI to then augment our knowledge. Our thought leadership, our knowledge is what makes us different. We just now need to use AI as a tool. It's the same thing as like CAD, right? We use CAD, we now use BIM, we now hopefully will start using digital twins in different ways, but it's not replacing the work that we're doing. How'd I do?
It's a slightly different AI, that straight question. Maybe I should put it to the group tomorrow.
You can, but then you have to tell me later on because now I'm very curious too.
You can always ask ourselves. You can find this, but I'll go right now and check you. But the answer was, it predicted the answer on a 1 to 10 point
Oh,
scale.
1 to 10. So I would be like a 3 to 4 probably then.
Okay, it was 5.6.
Okay.
Saying 10 was replacement and 1 was not. So GPT thinks you people think more than 50% chance of replacement of your jobs in that time frame, which was an interesting answer.
Yeah, agreed.
20.
Any other questions? So here's what I would encourage you to do. You've got paper, you've got pads at your tables. Write down your insights. I'll be back tomorrow to talk you through some questions where we're going to do some live discussion. I'll provide more context, and we're going to do live discussions at our tables and then share out our thoughts from the room. So, Pam, anything else?
I remember, I don't know which one I'm on. I remember not even having a cell phone and going outside to play and ride my bike and, whatever. And this is awesome. I'm not afraid. Are you afraid?
Don't be afraid.
Maybe we're all afraid. Super exciting. Let's give Mark a great big round of applause.
Thank you so much for having me.
It was awesome.